From today, consider yourself a stranger. Don't come back. My mother said it like a knife, and the words kept ringing in that narrow hallway. My dad stood behind her with his arms crossed, and his silence felt colder than anything she said. I let out a laugh that was all edge and tremor, a laugh that broke on the way out. Stranger, I'm your daughter, I wanted to say. But the door shut before I could get the word daughter out. The lock clicked closed. The key in my hand, still warm from the metal, suddenly meant nothing. I pressed my forehead against the wood, willing it to open, pleading in my head that someone would say it was a mistake or some cruel joke. There was nothing, just a heavy, empty silence. Hi everyone, I'm Sophia. I'm 27. In that instant I learned what it feels like when the place you call home spits you out like someone nobody invited. So tell me, what are you when your family erases your name? The hallway reeked faintly of fresh paint and dust. A neighbor peered through her curtains, curiosity written all over her face, but she kept quiet. Shame flamed hot in my throat. My bag sat at my feet, loaded with clothes and books. And yet I felt suddenly hollow, like I was slipping through a hole the world made for me. I walked away, one step after another, my shoes making a sound that felt too loud for someone who'd just been made invisible. That week stretched on like a wound that wouldn't heal. I crashed in a friend's spare room, staring up at a ceiling that wasn't mine and replaying my parents' words until they were a loop in my head. Stranger, stranger, stranger. Then, a week later, my phone buzzed. Not a message from Mom, not from Dad. It was from their lawyer. The subject line screamed urgent. Call immediately. I read it twice, then 3 times, my heart thumping against my ribs. What problem? I thought. They'd thrown me out, hadn't they? Locked me away like trash. Why were they reaching out now? I stared at the email, my reflection trembling in the cracked glass of the screen. For the first time since the door slammed, something else edged in, not the dull ache but a harder, steadier feeling. They'd pushed me out, sure, but now they needed me, and I wasn't the kid who begged at their doorstep anymore. That useless key in my hand that night felt different. I realized I was poised to open something much bigger. My thumb hovered over the call button like it was a trigger. A week ago I had begged them to let me back in, now their lawyer wanted me on the phone like I still belonged to the circle they'd broken. So I hit call. Miss Sophia, a man's voice said, clipped, formal, like he was reading from a script. Your parents are in some difficulty. They asked me to contact you. I let the silence sit for a beat, heavy and deliberate. When I spoke it came out calm but raw. That's strange, I said. A week ago they told me I was nothing to them, a stranger. So why am I on your contact list now? There was a pause, paper rustling on the other end. There's a financial matter, the lawyer said, a trust, an asset transfer. It needs your signature. I smiled even though my chest hurt. They'd disowned me in life, but they couldn't scrub my name from legal paper. My name, there on documents signed long before they'd decided to cut me out, had become a tether pulling them back to me. Mr. Harrison, I said, each syllable tasting like coal, why don't you tell my parents that strangers don't sign papers? The silence that followed felt almost like revenge. I hung up. My phone vibrated with missed calls within minutes, Mom, Dad, and even numbers I had blocked but didn't recognize. Those same people who couldn't meet my eyes and had shut the door on me were suddenly desperate to hear my voice. That night I lay awake again in the spare room, but this time I wasn't stuck replaying their cruelty. I kept seeing their panic instead, my father pacing the kitchen, the same place he once told me no one would ever want me, my mother wringing her hands like a cornered animal. They'd built everything around control. I had been the obedient daughter who cooked, covered mistakes, swallowed humiliation. Then they cut me off. And sometimes when you cut something, it doesn't mend the way you expect. My phone lit up with another email the next morning, documents attached, their lawyer begging me to at least look them over. I didn't open them right away. For the first time I realized that revenge doesn't always roar, sometimes it slips in quiet, an unread message that says everything. And my silence turned out to be the loudest answer they'd gotten. Sunlight seeped through thin curtains the next morning but it didn't feel warm. My phone on the nightstand blinked like a nervous heartbeat. New messages kept coming, please respond. We need your cooperation. Sophia, this is urgent. They weren't calling me daughter anymore, just Sophia, like I was a line item. Finally I opened the attachments. Legal pages filled my screen, dense clauses, official stamps, lines waiting for a signature. One phrase stopped me cold: beneficiary, Sophia Grace Bennett. My name, printed bold and permanent. I stared until my vision blurred. After years of being treated like I didn't matter, there it was in black ink, proof I mattered in a way they couldn't erase. Suddenly everything clicked. They hadn't merely disowned me, they had miscalculated. Somewhere in their web of property and pride, I was threaded through the foundation. I was the signature they needed to keep the whole thing standing. I could almost picture it, my father pounding his fist on the oak table, my mother clutching her pearls, both realizing their kingdom had a crack. And that crack was me. I didn't answer. Instead I forwarded the documents to a lawyer I trusted, my friend's uncle who owed me a favor. He called me back within the hour. Sophia, he said, and his voice sharpened, this isn't just urgent. This is leverage. Play it right and they'll come crawling. The word crawling thumped through me like a drumbeat. For years, I was the one crawling. I cooked Thanksgiving dinners by myself. I scrubbed floors after their parties while my siblings joked in the next room. I dipped into my own savings to cover Dad's bad investments. And what did I get for it? To be called a stranger. Not anymore. That evening, their number flashed across my phone again. This time, I picked up. I wanted to hear it with my own ears. Sophia. My mother's voice cracked, half an order, half a plea. We need to meet tonight. It's complicated. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her squirm. Then I said, low and steady, I'm busy. Strangers don't clear their calendars for people who disown them. I hung up before she could reply. For once, I didn't feel like the forgotten child. I felt like the storm brewing on their horizon. And storms don't knock politely before they smash the windows. By the third day of silence, everything had shifted. My phone wasn't a leash anymore, it was a stage. Every voicemail, every frantic email, every desperate call was part of a play, and I was the one directing the script. Then came the message that made me sit straight up, subject, family dinner. Saturday night. Please come. Dinner. The same house that tossed me onto the street was now setting a place at their table. I laughed so hard my friend shouted from the other room to ask what was funny. Dinner? I whispered to myself, almost choking on the word. After being branded a stranger, I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pictured it, the polished table, the crystal glasses, plates arranged like trophies. My parents perched at the head, my siblings lined up neat as soldiers, and one empty chair, mine. But this time, that seat wasn't theirs to offer. It was mine to claim. I called my lawyer contact. He didn't sound surprised. They're not inviting you back out of love, Sophia. They're cornered. Don't walk into that house unprepared, and don't go alone. I thought about his words all night. I thought about the slammed door, the useless key, the sharp snap in my mother's voice, but I also heard the tremble underneath it. For the first time, I recognized fear wrapped in her pride. Saturday came. I dressed in silence, not with shame, not with humility. A simple black dress, sharp lines, heels that clicked like thunder on the sidewalk. The reflection staring back at me wasn't the girl they had thrown out. It was someone new. The house glowed with golden lights when I arrived, but the curtains were half drawn, like even the walls were hiding. The door opened before I knocked. My father stood there, his tie crooked, his eyes sunken. He didn't call me honey. He didn't call me daughter. He just stepped aside and muttered, "Come in." The air smelled of roasted meat and expensive wine. My siblings looked up, shock stitched across their faces. My mother sat clutching a wine glass she hadn't touched. "Sophia," she said softly, almost rehearsed. "We're glad you came." I sat down, my back rigid, my silence louder than any hello. I wasn't there for dinner. I was there for the reckoning. And between the silverware and the silence, I was ready to serve my own dish, cold, sharp, unforgettable. The only sound in that suffocating dining room was the clink of utensils being moved, not used. Plates of lamb, bowls of vegetables, glasses of wine sat untouched, props in a play no one wanted to act. My siblings fidgeted, speaking only with glances. My mother's smile was so tight it looked painful. My father cleared his throat, the sound that used to hush entire rooms, but tonight it wavered. Sophia, he started, his voice rehearsed but ragged, we may have overreacted. Last week was emotional. Emotional. That was his word for disowning me. For slamming a door in my face. For turning my key into worthless metal. Emotional. I leaned back, tracing the rim of my glass with my finger. Overreacted, I repeated slowly. Is that what you call throwing away your daughter like garbage? My mother flinched. My father's jaw locked. My siblings couldn't look at me. Finally, my mom tried again, her voice dipped in fake sweetness that barely hid the tremble. Sophia, darling, you know we didn't mean it like that. Families fight. But right now, we need you. There are some documents. And there it was. I cut her off, my voice sharper than any knife at the table. Stop pretending. This isn't about family. This is about money. This is about control. And now you need the signature of the stranger you created. The word stranger filled the air like smoke. My father's palm slammed against the table. You don't understand what's at stake. I met his eyes, unblinking. No, I said, steady and cold, I understand perfectly. What's at stake is everything you thought you could hold without me. And suddenly, I matter again. The room froze. My siblings were statues, trapped between fear and loyalty. My mother's hands shook around her glass. My father's face turned a shade I'd never seen, veins straining with anger he couldn't unleash. For the first time in my life, I felt taller than both of them, not because I held the power they wanted, but because I no longer needed theirs. I laid my napkin gently on the table, stood, and let my heels thunder against the polished floor. I'll think about your little dinner invitation, I said, voice low. But remember this, strangers don't save families. And I walked out, leaving their flawless dinner untouched. The silence that followed was heavier than any slammed door, because this time I wasn't the one left outside. By morning, my inbox was crammed with more emails than I'd ever gotten from them in my entire life. Subject lines shouted, Sophia, please reconsider. The estate is at risk. We'll explain everything if you just come back. They were unraveling. And for once, I didn't feel rejection burn. I felt the calm hum of control. I forwarded every single email to my lawyer. He called within the hour. Sophia, he said, slow and deliberate, your parents are in worse shape than they've admitted. There's a trust tied directly to you. Without your consent, they lose access. That's why they're desperate. I leaned back, my pulse steady. So, the daughter they disowned was the one holding up their empire. He paused, then added, exactly. They built their walls without you, but the foundation runs through your name. They can't erase that. I spent the afternoon wandering the city, my thoughts louder than the traffic around me. For years I carried their burdens, their debts, their insults, their chaos. Now it was their empire cracking, and they were begging me to hold it together. That night, the phone rang again. My father's voice was sharp, frayed at the edges. If you don't sign, we could lose everything. Do you understand? Everything we've built, gone. I closed my eyes and let his words hang there, then I breathed out, you built it without me. You disowned me. Now you can live without me, too. The quiet that followed felt heavy and desperate, but for once it didn't hit me. When I hung up, I realized something important, my revenge didn't need shouting or slammed doors. It was quieter than that. It was letting them sit in the hollow of their own cruelty. And I learned that silence can be the sharpest weapon. News moves fast in a small town. Within days gossip became headlines, Ravenwood assets seized pending investigation. Family trust frozen until the beneficiary consents. Neighbors who once envied my parents suddenly watched them like vultures. The people who used to praise our perfect family were now picking apart every crack, and those cracks kept widening. My brother cornered me outside a cafe, looking pale. Sophia, please. You don't understand. Dad hasn't slept. Mom, she barely eats. They're falling apart, he said. I sipped my coffee slow and steady. Did they remember me when they locked me out? When they called me a stranger? No. He opened his mouth but couldn't find an answer, because we both knew the truth. That evening my lawyer called with an update. They've tried everything, emergency motions, loopholes, pressure on the board. It all points back to you. Without your signature, they're finished, he said. I walked past their house that night, the curtains were shut tight and the lights flickered. For the first time I didn't see a fortress, I saw a cage, and my parents were trapped inside by the chains they'd made. A memory surfaced, 16-year-old me crying in that same kitchen after Dad told me I'd never amount to anything, while Mom wiped the counter and ignored me. Their love had always been conditional, their pride selective. Now they were the ones invisible, powerless, forgotten. I didn't knock. I didn't call. I just kept walking, the cool night air filling my lungs like freedom. The next morning another headline hit, Ravenwood assets seized pending investigation. My phone buzzed with dozens of missed calls, but I didn't answer. For once, I wasn't chasing or begging or explaining. They were collapsing, and I was gloriously still. The courthouse smelled like paper polish and fear. My parents sat across the aisle with shoulders hunched and faces drained. Once they were imposing in every room, now they looked small, children caught in their own storm. The judge's voice was steady, without the beneficiary's consent, the trust remains frozen. Assets will be redistributed under state oversight. My father's head fell into his hands. My mother whispered something that broke like glass. Their empire, their control, their pride, slipping away out in the open. When the session ended, they turned toward me. My mother's eyes shone. Sophia, she begged, reaching like I was still her child. Please help us. We're family. That word hit me like an echo from a place I knew too well. Family when they locked me out, family when they called me a stranger, family when they shut the door in my face. I stepped closer, calm and clear. No, I said quietly, steady as stone. Family shows up when you're broken. Family doesn't leave you outside with a useless key. You taught me what family isn't. Today I learned what family is, me choosing myself. Her hand trembled in the air, waiting. I didn't take it. I turned and let my heels click against the marble, each step a final cut of a chapter. Outside, sunlight spilled over the courthouse steps and warmed my skin, and for the first time in years, that warmth felt like it was mine. I paused, breathed in, and smiled, not at their ruin, but at my own release. Their cruelty no longer defined me. Their desperation no longer chained me. They'd called me a stranger, and now I finally was one, by choice.